Welcome, age of vintage society. Elizabeth Taylor was still madly in love with Richard Burton when he died. The Cleopatra co-star's love story encompassed 2 marriages, 2 divorces, and intense passion. Why was Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton's affair condemned even by the Pope? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Crazy Love, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton's epic romance. Elizabeth Taylor was an icon in her own right, known to this day for her larger-than-life personality and incredible career as an actress, but her turbulent love life also attracted plenty of attention before and after the star's death in 2011. One of the most shocking episodes in her romantic story has to be from 1976, when on August the 1st she divorced her beloved Richard Burton for the 2nd time. When they first met, 30-year-old Taylor was still married to Eddie Fisher, her 4th husband, their relationship having started as an affair. They did little to hide their entanglement, causing an all-out media scandal that followed them as they each divorced their respective partners. Yes, Burton was married too, to be together. But that didn't stop Taylor from falling for Burton when they shared a passionate on-screen kiss, and soon after the pair began their own affair. Years later, Elizabeth said, "When I saw him on the set of Cleopatra, I fell in love, and I have loved him ever since." Romance blossomed between Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton on the set of Cleopatra in 1962. Their tumultuous relationship was built on irresistible chemistry, vicious fights, a luxurious lifestyle, and awe-inspiring gifts. Even when they were the subject of controversy, they fascinated the public and the media. Through a decade-long first marriage, a divorce, a short-lived remarriage, and a second divorce, the bond between them couldn't be broken. When Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton first met on the set of Cleopatra in Rome, they were instantly smitten with each other, despite both being married. Taylor to her 4th husband, who she stole from Debbie Reynolds in one of the biggest celebrity scandals of the 1950s. Taylor and Burton were pictured relaxing on a speedboat in Ischia after filming Wrapped, the start of their extravagant love affair. After their yacht outing was published in the tabloids, the public became obsessed with Taylor and Burton's budding romance. The paparazzi stopped at nothing to catch the couple on camera, flocking to the star's Appian Way villa. Cleopatra was already off to an inauspicious start by the time the production got to Rome's Cine City Studios in 1961. Filming had begun a year earlier at Pinewood Studios in England, only to be scrapped after 16 weeks. The film's director, Ruben Mamoulian, had spent $7 million and produced only 10 minutes of usable footage before he quit. All About Eve director Joseph L. Mankiewicz took over from Mamoulian. The first order of business was overhauling the script. The second was recasting the 2 male leads. Burton and Rex Harrison replaced Stephen Boyd and Peter Finch as Antony and Caesar. Then there was the film's $1 million leading lady, Taylor. When filming on Cleopatra began, Taylor was 29. Fisher had left his wife, Debbie Reynolds, for the violet-eyed seductress. That may seem like a dramatic description, but Taylor was regarded by many at the time in dramatic terms as a homewrecker. In other words, she was a risky proposition to carry a big-budget Hollywood film like Cleopatra. Another risk in hiring the $1 million leading lady was her reputation for illness on the sets of her films. During the first part of shooting in London, Taylor fell ill from Malta fever, bringing production to a grinding halt. Later, in February 1961, Taylor came down with double pneumonia. She was sleeping in an oxygen tent in a London clinic when she slipped into a coma. Some newspapers actually reported that Taylor had died. It was around that time that Burton, the 36-year-old Welsh rogue, was cast as Anthony. He was married at the time to Sybil Burton, but that hadn't stopped his reputation as a ladies' man. In fact, years earlier, Burton had met Taylor at a party and flirted heavily with her. She declined him, saying that she would not be another notch on his belt. Now in Rome, Taylor's health seemed to take a turn for the better, and so did her impression of Burton. By the beginning of 1962, the two stars were swept up in Le Scandale. On screen their chemistry was palpable. Off screen it was downright incendiary. Taylor and Burton weren't just playing Cleopatra and Antony, they were living it. Soon word of the taboo romance spread like wildfire. The Italian press, with the paparazzi in its infancy, bribing its way onto the set as extras, took the adulterous story and ran with it. When Fisher packed his bags and left Rome, it was as much confirmation as anyone could want. The fact that the two stars would hole up in their trailer all afternoon when they were due on set didn't help quiet speculation. Neither did the alternating sounds of clinking highballs, screaming fights, and giggling frolics. The mad love between Liz and Dick made headlines around the world. A congresswoman from Georgia asked the Attorney General to block the stars from coming back into the country on the grounds of undesirability. The Vatican newspaper printed an open letter taking Taylor to task for erotic vagrancy. The latest tidbits in the scandal knocked John Glenn's Orbit of the Earth from the front pages of several newspapers. Long lens telephoto shots of the couple cavorting on holiday were splashed everywhere. When Cleopatra wrapped 2.5 years after it began, Taylor made Burton husband number 5. Meanwhile, the film's director, Mankiewicz, said, "If you want a textbook on how not to make a film, this is it." After all the drama, Taylor refused to go to the film's premiere. The months, years of merciless tabloid coverage had worn her out on the subject of Cleopatra. The final humiliation, she quipped, would be having to see the film. Cleopatra was over, but the long, tumultuous saga of Taylor and Burton was just beginning. In 1964 they wed, just 10 days after Taylor finalised her divorce from Fisher, and so began a decade of love, money, scandal and passion. Being big-name stars who had fallen in love on screen, fans were also obsessed with Liz and Dick's romance, and the media kept a close eye on the couple as their marriage progressed. There were reports of the lavish gifts Burton gave his wife, such as a 69-carat Cartier diamond ring costing $1.5 million, as well as their horrendous fights later in the marriage. She would go on to marry him, although later she said she only did that out of grief, but if her performance in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is anything to go by, Liz Taylor did some of her best work when her real life was in turmoil. Taylor always swore it had been perhaps her career high point, despite it being filmed in the middle of the most tempestuous period of an often turbulent life. The marriage went on for a full decade, and they were soon described as the marriage of the century, but behind closed doors, things weren't always idyllic between the temperamental actress and her older alcoholic husband. Taylor gave up in 1974 and filed for divorce in Switzerland, but after Burton bombed her with love letters begging her to reconsider, she gave in and remarried him, only to admit that the relationship was over and divorce again within months. Elizabeth Taylor said she had remarried Richard Burton after an X-ray revealed spots on her lungs, which she feared were cancerous. She said the 12 hours of anxiety waiting for the prognosis, which turned out to be clear, convinced her to remarry. Another newspaper story which surfaced shortly after their second wedding said Liz Taylor had sold back a £500,000 honeymoon ring to pay for a hospital in Botswana. However, their stormy relationship did not last. Burton and Taylor's scandalous romance didn't harm their careers as one might have feared. In fact, it caught the imagination of the public so much that the studios were quick to capitalise on it, having the two starring together on several occasions. Between 1963 and 73, Burton and Taylor shared the screen in a total of 10 films and 1 TV movie, with their most famous collaboration, apart from Cleopatra, being Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? The other films the two worked on together are The VIPs, The Sandpiper, The Taming of the Shrew, Dr. Faustus, The Comedians, Boom, Under Milk Wood, Hammersmith is Out, and Divorce Hers. Despite the demise of their two marriages, Burton and Taylor never ceased communicating with each other, and in 1983, after she had divorced her 6th husband, Senator John Warner, the two appeared together on Broadway. Burton died the next year at his home in Switzerland at age 58. Taylor survived him for another 27 years, passing away in 2011 at age 79. While both went on to marry other people twice after being together, some say the feelings they had for each other never went away. They couldn't get away from each other, they were just drawn together with such an inextinguishable love, playwright Mark Jenkins summarised at the time of Taylor's death. I know my uncle remained in love with her for the remainder of his life. The fire was never extinguished for those two. Burton's great-nephew, Guy Masterson, also shared at the time. Although Elizabeth Taylor married 8 times, but only Liz Taylor's relationship with Richard Burton truly defined her. For the past 50 years, Cleopatra has remained the gold standard of Hollywood excess. The 1963 epic nearly sank 20th Century Fox. It took 2.5 years to shoot. It burned through 2 directors and 2 regime changes at the studio. Its budget rocketed from $2 million to a then unthinkable $44 million. And, most famously, it left the marriages of its 2 stars, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, in ashes. Nowadays, in an age when celebrity breakups and affairs are more or less routine happenings dissected and dispatched by the tabloids in the blink of an eye, we aren't so easily surprised. But the early 60s were a different time, and the titillating, tawdry gossip coming from the Roman set of Cleopatra was like catnip for the world. Once they'd had a taste of Liz and Dick and Le Scandale, celebrity would never be the same again. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton's relationship? Do you condemn their love too, or do you prefer them as Hollywood's golden couple?